welcome to your journey preparing for a career in finance. Hi, my name is Kirsten Moss. I am the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Stanford Business School, and we really appreciate you being with us here today. This is a panel that is different from others that we've done. We really just started panels like this during the pandemic, where we usually would have a group of students come and talk about all aspects of the Stanford GSB. Now we're really diving much deeper. So I'm looking forward to talking about specifically your career in finance. For those of you who are interested, either are in finance right now, or perhaps are interested in pivoting and getting your MBA to do that, we really want to focus on what your experience could look like, what the resources are here at the GSB, and how they could help you in the future. So I am delighted today. I was able to bring together 4 students, and usually we'll have some folks in the program, some graduates recently, and then later graduates. But today I thought it was really important, given this panel, for you to get a taste of 4 students who all just graduated. So they're all class of 2021, have made their decisions on what they want to do in the world of finance, and be able to share with their recent memory what it was like to be at the GSB and what helped them thinking through that transition and ultimately choosing a career there. So hopefully that'll be fun for you. Let me as well, I'm going to go ahead and start. Looks like we have, all right. So today's event, we're going to start with a brief introduction and really talk about career outcomes at the GSB. Then I'll give you a chance to meet the panelists. Then I will throw to our panelists 4 or 5 questions to get started. And then really we want to spend time answering your questions. So if you put those in the Q&A, there's also an upvote feature. We'll make sure we get to the ones that are most important to you. And then finally, we will wrap at about 55 minutes together. All right, so if we just take a moment, because this really is focusing on, for those of you who are interested in finance, where could your GSB journey take you? And if you look right now, the top one, upon graduation, so this was for the graduating class of 2020, and this data is on the web if you'd like to look a little bit more. You can see what our top 5 industries are, with finance being at the top. And within the finance industry, 34% of our students actually decided to take a career at graduation. 15% in private equity, 7% in investment management, 9% in venture capital, and then we have a mixture of hedge and investment banking in the other. Coming into our program, we actually have about 20% that are in the investment management, private equity, VC arena. So you can see over time, another 10% of students join them. If you're currently sitting in the audience and you're in finance right now, what you'll see traditionally is about 2/3 of the students coming in to finance who had finance careers decide to stay in finance, and they may switch in terms of the arena that they're practicing that. So maybe it's PE to VC, or someone may start their own fund, for instance. And then there's about 1/3 of our students who have finance backgrounds who decide to go into operating roles. Maybe they're doing their own startup or joining a company. So today in selecting our panelists, you'll see a little bit of everything to understand how all of those different pivots can happen. And then I wanted to pause about salary and be very specific in finance. I think our average salary upon graduation is about $160,000. For finance in particular, the median is $187,000. And I just wrote, you can look on data on the web, but in PE, that would be about a $200,000 base, $180K bonus, bonus for that first year performance expected, and then $43K in sign-in bonus. So that gives you a sense of how your compensation might change as you evolve through the GSB. Another thing to note is our students come upon any given year will work both for their internships and upon graduation for 445 different organizations. And given Stanford's class is only about 400 students, you can see that our students are very targeted in where they want to go. And there is just a plethora of opportunities, unlike perhaps what you might have seen in undergrad, where there are huge feeder companies that are coming to campus. Here you really will have, whether it's geography, industry, or location, geography, industry, or function, you'll have many, many choices. All right, so it's time to meet our panelists. We have 4 today. And as I said, I tried to ensure on the panel that you'd see lots of different backgrounds. So some you'll hear didn't have any finance background and have now pivoted there. Others came from finance and might be taking roles in a different industry, although keeping that finance strong, or coming from PE and banking perhaps and going into hedge or search. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that right now. And Daniel, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask you to first tell us about your role before the GSB, why you decided to attend. And I'll pause there because what we find with our prospects who are coming from finance, oftentimes it's hard to give up the jobs that they already have. So we're going to hit on that. Or the question that comes up is, how valuable is an MBA? Do I need to do it? So for each of you, I'm going to ask you about your role before the GSB, why you decided to attend Stanford, and then what you're going to be doing now, and how the GSB influenced that decision over your 2 years.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kirsten. So I'm Daniel. I was born in Colombia. Before the GSB, I worked at Citigroup in the investment banking M&A Latin America group for 2 years in New York and Mexico City. And then I moved to Colombia to work for a higher ed education startup. And while doing that, I started a nonprofit called Mentors for You. It's a career development mentorship program to help low-income college students get the best jobs in Colombia. And I was also an adjunct professor at a local university of social entrepreneurship there in Colombia. I came to the GSB because I did a joint degree, the MBA Master in Education, which is a very, very unique program, ideal for anyone that wants to be in a business and education role or a leadership role within an education institution, or doing a startup in education or investing in education. And that's during the GSB, I was involved in everything related to education and investing and entrepreneurship in education. And I just joined as a partner of an education-focused investment fund and venture builder called Appian Education Ventures.
Awesome. And Danielle, was there anything at the GSB that helped you in particular decide that this was the ultimate job you wanted to take?
Sure. So I think the Impact Fund, I think, was something that really, really helped me. I was in the education team of the Impact Fund, and thanks to that, like, I learned everything about kind of early stage VC investing in education. And thanks to that, I met the team at Owl Ventures, which is an edtech VC fund that were our advisor at the Impact Fund, and I worked with them, like volunteer with them part-time, helping them invest in Latin America for these 2 years. So they actually, it was the perfect experience to then go into a more edtech focused role.
Awesome.
So I think that was one of the best experiences for my particular interest.
Great. Thanks so much. Georgie, how about I start with you next? Your role before the GSB, why you decided to come, and what you're doing now, and then how the GSB helped you figure that out.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Georgie. Before the GSB, I worked for 2 years in investment banking at JP Morgan. And then I worked for 2 years in private equity at TPG. I worked specifically in TPG Growth and the Rise Fund, which is TPG's social impact fund. I came to Stanford, it's funny to think back now, but I came for a few reasons. Coming out of private equity, I definitely struggled with what Kirsten was talking about, of feeling as though in my current spot, I had a number of attractive opportunities that I wanted to pursue. I knew I loved investing. And from my current role, I had opportunities to continue in private equity or go directly to work at a hedge fund, which is what I was most interested in. So the decision to, trade off between going directly to these great opportunities versus going to business school was a tough one for me. It was solved, and not to be too cute here, but really when I got into Stanford, for me, I wasn't sure that any business school would be the right choice, but Stanford seemed to me to really have an X factor that would make it incredibly impactful, both for my professional life and also my personal life. Professionally, because just seeing examples, it's such a small elite community where I heard time and time again that by meeting professors or meeting classmates, people ended up pursuing careers they hadn't dreamed of. One example is a legendary Professor McDonald, who, through his mentorship and connecting people to the Bass family, there, was sprouted TPG, SPO, and essentially 5 massive, massive firms. And so it just seemed like a place that was really an accelerator of connecting talented people and resources to create a really exciting new path. And so I thought that, yes, I want to work at a hedge fund, or so I thought, but let me at least go spend these 2 years opening opportunities in case I don't want to do that. And then personally, Stanford just has such a unique culture. I've heard it referred to as a personal boot camp, and I would definitely second that. I thought it would be a great place to really reflect on my experiences and refine sort of what my strengths and weaknesses were and what I really wanted out of my career, so I could make a good choice coming out of my 2 years there. So that was why I chose Stanford. After school, or now, I'm working on what's called a search fund, which is basically raising money to go out and buy a business. And in terms of how the GSB influenced that, the GSB was pivotal in that decision. I came into my second year having done an internship in investment management at Fidelity, thinking for sure I wanted to work at a hedge fund. My winter quarter, I stumbled into a search fund class, never having heard what a search fund was. And then meeting those professors, kind of falling into that network. The search fund really was born out of Stanford and Irv Grousbeck. I kind of fell in love with it, and it felt like a great fit for both my skills, but also what I really wanted out of a career and kind of taking risk at this point. So without Stanford, I'm not sure if I would be doing this. And so I'm really grateful for the experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Georgie. How about Jessica? We turn it over to you.
Yeah, of course. Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm originally from Salvador, Brazil. Most recently, prior to the GSB, I was at Palantir. So I worked there in sort of a myriad of like product management, business development, focused specifically on the government side of the business. So very much not finance. And then before that, I worked at a law firm because once upon a time I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So also like really not finance. So I came in and was what we affectionately called at the GSB, the triple Bs. So I took base accounting, base finance, I forgot even what the other class was kind of that. So it was like, really like did not know anything coming into the GSB. If you asked me what like an income statement was, I would probably run away crying. So that's just to level set like how little I knew about finance. And now I work in venture capital. I work in early stage venture, invest in seed through Series C, although my fund actually just raised a growth fund. So I'll also do that coming shortly. I guess a couple of the things I think are worth mentioning. One, I think the GSB was phenomenal in terms of giving me a financial education. So I feel very confident now with basically anything related to finance. I was able to build upon. I had a fantastic intro to finance class when I first started the GSB, was able to build on top of that and take a bunch of finance classes that further specialize and deepen my knowledge throughout the GSB. And I thought the GSB was just really great at helping me gain that knowledge. There were many like tutoring opportunities after classes so that I could beef up my knowledge, since I was coming in at like a very low level of finance knowledge. In general, like all of the classmates were really helpful, professors were really helpful. So I would just say, particularly for any one of you who are thinking of going to a career in finance and kind of nervous about how you're going to do that if you don't have the experience, I think the MBA is really just fantastic for that. And the GSB in particular really, really prepared me for a career in finance. So I think that that's sort of number one. And then Kristen, please remind me of the other questions.
Yeah, you've answered them. How did you decide to go into venture capital? And was there anything that particularly helped you in that?
Yeah, so I always loved technology. So when I worked at the law firm, I worked in intellectual property. Obviously Palantir is very, I wasn't really a startup at the time I joined, but like very much in the world of tech. And I always thought it was really interesting. But I kind of realized that I didn't necessarily want to do being an operator for the long term, and that is like working in startups. And I just love the idea. I love the idea of helping people and helping people sort of achieve their dreams. And I thought that working in venture was a way for me to pair up with a bunch of entrepreneurs and help them sort of build great companies and give the skills that I have, which is sort of helping people achieve their potential and having sort of like a clear and logical mind and like spotting trends and like helping in that way. So I thought it was sort of a good fit for what I was interested in and sort of the skills I had, and then the skills that I built at the GSB. And at the GSB, I got really involved in the Venture Capital Club. I was the president of the Venture Capital Club and really loved it. Got to meet with a bunch of venture funds. I think for anyone going to venture, I personally don't think that there's another business school that can hold like a candle to the GSB. Like you just see the entire Sand Hill Road venture funds like coming in and desperate to meet GSBers. They all want to know what your classmates are starting and what you're doing and what's happening on campus. Like it's a very thriving ecosystem. And so it was kind of like a no-brainer, since I thought I wanted to do venture to go to the GSB. And then that very much proved true once I went to the GSB. It was just like absolutely the best place I could have been. And kind of like had my pick of jobs like once I graduated and picked this fund that I really loved and interned over the summer. I guess the other thing I would say that was really helpful is I have a lot of classmates from college that went to other business schools that didn't necessarily have the best experience with the career services at the other schools. And I, on the other hand, like could sing praises to this. There's this one person called Tom, who's like the person for venture capital and at the GSB. And I mean, like he would answer my emails in a minute. I would call him like freaking out before interviews on a Saturday, and he would be there and cheering on me, just like really incredible people and support. So, I mean, like have nothing but amazing things to say about the GSB when it came to that, particularly given I had like no background, no network, because I'm Brazilian, like really didn't know people. Like GSB really set me up well for going into VC.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Ishan, how about you?
Yeah, sure. So before business school, I did a smattering of different things. I worked at Silver Lake in private equity out of college, doing kind of technology buyouts. I left to start my own company, which was an education marketplace. I did that for 2 years. And after selling that, I worked at China's largest wealth manager, sourcing growth stage US technology deals. So, you know, throughout all of those, I knew my passion was technology. I had seen companies at basically every stage, from idea stage to growth stage to late stage buyout. And I had actually, similar to Georgie, I had read this article online. I might post it in the chat,
Awesome.
about several GSB investors in the 70s and 80s that came from Jack McDonald, but others too, including an investment group of Santa Barbara. And I said, wow, these are some amazing investors. They're not as well covered as Warren Buffett, but in my mind, I wanted to be like them. And they focused on technology and they had a long-term view of the world. And so that's why I came to GSB. I said, maybe I'll have a shot at becoming like them if I go to this school. And I actually came in with that focus, which I never really felt prior. And it was reaffirmed to me within the first 6 months of GSB, mostly through other classmates. I think something that a lot of people don't talk about is the breadth of experiences that the classmates have at GSB, whether that's deep in venture capital or whether that's like Jessica at Palantir, and just seeing all aspects of technology helped me figure out that I really wanted to be on the investment side long-term and, you know, basically do that. And this opportunity at Citadel, I worked there between first and second year, was kind of the last part of the tech life cycle that I hadn't explored, public markets. And so I took that up in the summer. This was during COVID, which was an interesting, uncertain time. And I really enjoyed it. And there, my logic was very similar to the reason why I came to GSB, which was the people I met were the smartest people I could find. And also I could spend a lot of time with them and still be happy and be myself, which I think is very important. And I found that to be true during the 3 months at Citadel in the summer. So I've returned and started here. And I would say the second thing that, you know, I probably haven't seen the benefits of yet, but I will soon or later in life, is a lot of the non-finance courses at GSB, which is a big reason I came, touchy-feely and interpersonal dynamics and other courses. And I think in finance, sometimes we underestimate the importance of teamwork and evaluating people and even building teams within financial organizations. And Stanford does an amazing job of that. And I would say that's something not to dismiss when you're thinking about Stanford in the lens of finance, and probably something people don't talk about enough.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ishan. What I love about hearing from all of you is such different backgrounds and still going in different paths, but finding things at the GSB that helped you get there. Let's take make a bridge from your last answer, Ishan. One of the things I did want to ask was, what was an academic course or experience that has really helped you, or you think will help you in your current job, or as Ishan said, in your next steps? And it could be in finance, or it could have been something like touchy-feely, but what pops for you, academic course or experience? How about I start back with you, Daniel?
Sure. And I want to highlight what Ishan said about the soft skills interpersonal aspect. For me, the most unique experience of the GSB was being an Arbuckle Fellow. And for those of you that you don't know what an Arbuckle Fellow, it's a program where you're basically trained as a coach and as a mentor, and then you have the opportunity to receive coaching and mentorship from professional coaches throughout a year, and then you become the coach to 8 first years. And basically, that experience, which was an incredibly just introspection, development of self-awareness, personal development, how I impact others, how others impact me, just having that awareness was incredibly, I think it represents what the GSB is, which is, it has just world-class finance and operations and entrepreneurship materials, but and experiences and classes, but just combining that with this touchy-feeliness, it's incredibly unique. And this is what I think what we need more in finance, in the industry. So I think that's the thing that I say is just incredible how we could take an investments class or a cert fund garage, which is like that I took with Georgie, like that type of class, finance and entrepreneurship, and then combine it with more, touchy-feely, Arbuckle Fellows, like just this coaching mentality, and just having that versatility of being able to go to one side or the other, the more logical to the more emotional, and just being able to adapt to whatever person we're dealing with or whatever situation we have.
Awesome. How about Jessica? I come back to you.
Yeah, I would definitely highlight the soft skills classes. We have a bunch. So in your first year, you do something called the leadership labs, and you get to interact with fellow classmates, and you get recorded, and you see sort of how you interact in a group. And then there's touchy-feely class, which is interpersonal dynamics, which is also sort of like a deep dive into, quite literally, interpersonal dynamics and relationships. I think that's really helpful because obviously a career in finance is, yeah, you have to know finance, but you also, there's so much about the people element, right? Like finance is most of the time, even in hedge funds, like you're still meeting with companies and the CEOs and getting to build relationships with them. But most of finance is you're investing in a company, you're meeting with entrepreneurs, or you're meeting with a CEO, and you're getting to know people, and you're in the business of people. And I think that that's sometimes not highlighted by folks who think about like what is going to be your financial education. And so I think that learning how to really interact well with people is really important. I think on the more hard skill classes, I think one of the classes that I really loved is I took this sort of legendary financial modeling class from a professor called DeMarzo.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work. You kind of sell your soul to that class for a quarter, but again, like I came from knowing absolutely nothing. Like, again, like I would open an Excel sheet and like come running to the other side and cry, to be able to completely model an LBO, like an entire waterfall of VC returns, and feel really confident with that. That's, I think, some pretty crazy transformation for sitting 3 months in a classroom, and in my case over Zoom doing this. So you do really get very well equipped to go into the career.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. And I'm guessing about half of our audience is in your position of I want to be in finance and haven't done it. So it's really helpful. And just one other comment before Jessica was talking about base classes. When you come in, there is a required curriculum at the GSB, and there are 3 different levels. So for those of you who haven't seen finance before, you'll go into the base. And for those of you maybe more like Georgie's background, who was in iBanking and private equity, you'll go into the very top level of the finance class, because we want to customize it to what your learning is. Georgie, I'm going to come back to you. One of the things that is very special about the GSB is all the experiential classes, Startup Garage, Interpersonal Dynamics, and you did, one of our newest courses is this Startup Search Fund, and now you're doing a search fund. Any highlight you can give the audience so they understand what it means to do something experiential and also finance at this, bringing both of those together? And I'll say one more thing, at Stanford, you will read case studies as a student, and you'll recommend to the protagonist, if you write a write-up on the case, what they should do, but we also want you to be the protagonist of your own life. So we want to give you the skills to go out and do things, not just read about it and tell other people what to do. So I'd love to get your insights on how that course went.
Yeah, that was a fantastic course, and I'm sure Danny can jump in here too. That was my first actually really experiential course where I was the subject of the course and my experience. And essentially the goal of that class was to come out at the end of it ready to launch a search fund. And we had 3 professors who both are excellent, or all 3 are excellent practitioners in the space. And then the class was a number of classmates who were really passionate about this and ready to hit the ground running, but also in very different stages. Some were sort of, at the beginning stage of figuring out, do I want to do a search fund? And some had already figured out they want to do it and had raised capital. I was sort of closer to the latter group, and I actually have been working with a fund, and we had found a deal that we wanted to pursue. So I'd been looking at that for 3 months before the class started. And then during that class, essentially was working through the process of selling the founder to sell their company to us, and also diligencing the company. And then also just thinking more broadly, is this an investment thesis I really want to pursue? And am I working with people that I really want to work with? And it was a fascinating experience because often we would just bring our problems to the classroom and we would just discuss it in an open forum. And I remember one of them was that, I had all these diligence questions that I wanted to get the bottom of, and I felt that we were taking too long to ask, very basic questions about financials. And you would present that to the class, and some of the feedback I would get was so enlightening. And people would say, well, actually the sales process and building a relationship with the seller is far more important. It's not like private equity where you can say, send these 15 files. It really is much more of an EQ exercise versus an IQ exercise. And it was so cool to be learning that live in class, and also build an incredible relationship with my professors who now have become mentors because they saw me sort of work through these questions. And so that class was really instrumental in me kind of learning what is it really like to pursue a search fund, and also get comfort with doing that after school.
Awesome. Ishan, I'm going to ask you one question too. What I realize, given your PE background, a specific question, we have 15% of our students going into PE, another 7 in investment management. So in that whole arena, it's really one of the biggest pathways. I have a great friend in career services like Jessica was talking about. So Bill Thompson, I know, is our PE guru. And he usually says if someone's coming from an iBanking or PE background, they have no problem securing a job. But just given none of you are doing that right out, it might be a big interest. Do you have any insights from friends or others at Silver Lake or other firms and how they were able to secure jobs?
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I think there's more jobs than students at GSB in general. So if you want to do PE, you can do it. I would also emphasize that I still found value in the accounting courses, just to like wrap up and tie a lot of loose ends, that maybe you learned on the job, but it's good to know the academic part of it. So that's a shout out to Ron Kaznick there on the accounting side.
Awesome.
And the survey courses, because in PE, you come from a specific style of private equity, and it's good to see leaders in other styles or other sizes of deals. And so Finance 207, was a survey course I took that was really helpful for me to see different styles of investing, to find where I wanted to be. Even if that's within PE, there's so many different ways to do it now. So.
Will you tell us I don't know what 207 is, so I'm really curious too. When you say survey, what do you mean?
We had different speakers come from different parts of finance, and it was just amazing. Not only the students you can talk to and learn from them, but you learn from the speakers telling their life stories. So we had distressed investing guys, we had growth equity investors, we had venture capitalists. So we were able to see people at the top of their field, how they thought differently. And that helped me figure out where I fit in too.
That's awesome. All right. I'm going to start going to some of the questions that are in our Q&A, keeping an eye on the time. So I'll read one from, I think it's Michael. As international students, are we required to apply to a specific program if we want to pursue a career in PS at a US-based firm? So this is a great actual question. We have 2 internationals on on the panel today, and it comes up a lot, of how much harder is it for international students to get working authorization in the States, and if you can speak to you or your friends, how they thought about that question. So Danielle, you want to start with that?
Sure. So now, maybe if you all know that now the GSB has the 3-year STEM exemption. So we can, if we want to stay in the US, we can stay above for 3 years if we work in STEM related fields. So that's a huge plus. And then it all depends on the firm, but I would say that most investing investing firm that have a good size accept internationals. And my friends that are staying from Latin America, that are staying in the US and doing investing, they all have their visas. Like these companies can sponsor their visa. So I think there's maybe it has to be like a boutique company that very, very few people, and maybe they don't have the admin, or they just don't want to hire international for some reason. But I actually haven't heard about it. So I would say that for P and BC, probably most of them will hire internationals.
That's great. Anything else, Jessica, from your perspective?
Yeah, so in my case, I was fortunate enough to get a green card right when I started school. So I wasn't subject to the to sort of H-1B international rules, but I was when I was at Yale. And I think the H-1B, honestly, like again, I think a lot of the bigger companies will sponsor an H-1B, but as Daniel said, there are many smaller boutique that are starting to understand the H-1B better. I think the big problem a lot of times with the H-1B when you first graduate college, so not for business school, when you first graduate college, is that you're in the regular pool. The regular pool is a much lower chance of you getting the H-1B lottery. Once you finish your master's, it's actually so much easier to get the lottery because you double dip until you have a priority just for master's, and then you double dip because you can also be eligible for the post-college sort of the just bachelor's lottery. And because the GSB gives the STEM extension for 3 years, that means you're eligible basically after your OPT for every year over the 3 years. So it's much easier to stay. And I think as long as you're able to communicate that to companies then feel totally fine spending basically the investment to get you to stay in the US, because obviously like you're GSBers, so they want to keep you here.
Awesome. The next question is from Enrique talk about, because I bet a bunch of folks in the audience have this question as well. He was saying that starting a fintech company requires many skills. And we do know that, as I said, about 1/3 of folks coming in with finance backgrounds end up going into operating roles. So the question is, how does the GSB program help you with these other skills, tech, product management, legal, what it's like to be an entrepreneur? So I'm going to look back to Ishin, because I know you founded your own company and have, what it takes on both sides. You have them both in your career, and maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, and I've invested in a lot of fintechs too, so I can talk a bit about that. But it all comes down to the people skills. Building a company is just a group of people that believe the same thing. And it's those core skills at GSB that you get to practice. You don't just learn from a textbook. Starting in the first quarter, that will be the most useful in starting a company, in my mind. And the idea will change, most likely. But, working that through with your classmates, pitching them, there's even student VC funds that you can pitch and get your ideas vetted from. That's really valuable. But I would say, first and foremost, it's practicing, finding co-founders, practicing what your pitch is, building a team, and figuring out what your mission is, which are all non-finance related things, but important for starting any company. So.
And that's a great segue. Ish, in many of our classes, like Startup Garage, or Georgie talked about Startup Search Fund, but Startup Garage or Design for Extreme Affordability, any of those classes have the student become, again, the protagonist to actually create a company. Anybody take one of those outside of Georgie's class and talk about what that's like? Anybody here did Startup Garage? No? Maybe I'll say a moment, because all those things, Ishan, you were saying, I know you've done it before because you were the entrepreneur, but a group of about 4 to 6 students will come together in a startup garage and they'll decide on what's the problem they want to solve. And in order to graduate that course, the class, actually the final class is what's the prototype. So you really will get very hands-on figuring out who could be my co-founder, what's the problem we want to solve, and how do we actually deliver a product that'll do that. Awesome. Let's go to the next. Is there anybody else who thinks about how you get entrepreneurial skills at Stanford? Or Danielle, you're launching and you know you're actually building companies right now. What would you say?
So, no, I would say like just when I think about my GSB experience, I think academics are maybe 20 or 25%. I think just the things outside of academics, formal classes, that's what the real experience is, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So just every BBL, every lunch that you can go to hear from entrepreneurs, hear from investors, you're learning there from them, starting there. And then just the things that you can do part-time on the side, volunteering, part-time work, doing projects with companies. That's where, and especially for us during pandemic, that was huge. So what I would, a little suggestion to anyone that either wants to have the investing or entrepreneurial experience is try to do something on the side, some sort of project, and you will be amazed by, with your Stanford email, saying you're a GSB, why you're interested in a certain, talking with a certain entrepreneur or a certain fund or a certain company, doing something with them. That's where you will learn the most. And then combining that experience with your actual classes, that combination is huge. And you can, and even working with other classmates, like we have, I don't know, 20 classmates that have already launched their own companies, some of them during the pandemic. Like you can do that. You can do your on the side project and just working while studying. I think it's if you are able to manage it, I think it's just the best way to learn on the go and put all these entrepreneurial experiences in for your benefit.
Awesome. And I will, just to cap what Danielle was saying, actually 18% of students launched companies last year, which is amazing. So you're going to be surrounded by role models who are really interested in that. And Poets and Quants did an article that looked back over the last 5 graduating classes. So just go back over the last 5 years. And if you look at the top 100 students from any business school who launched a company, ours was almost half of the list. And we raised more money than all the other ones put together, like 1.6 billion, 1.7 billion. And that's just people who are Ishan and Danielle and Jessica and Georgie's really stage of career, plus, you know, a couple years. So you will be inspired by the people around you. I have one more quick question from Charles. What are some of the most effective ways to gain practical investing experience at the GSB? And also, what are some of the avenues available to students who want to raise money to start their own fund? So I don't know, who would like to answer that? Ways to get investing experience or raising money?
I can jump in to start off. So I would say a good way to get investing experience is the Finance and Investment Club. And this club is a group of people who love investing. We have regular stock pitches, or sorry, I was the president, one of the presidents. So we had stock pitches. We would have an investment committee where people would pitch a stock, and then we would all sort of discuss, poke holes, and kind of help refine that person's investment thesis. And then we also ran a pretty substantial fund. I forget exactly, maybe Sean, you know, but I think it was over $300,000, where we would actually test the students' ideas. And so that was a great way to practice investing, get feedback from your peers, and then also get feedback from the market. I would also say that, sort of, Ishan mentioned this in his comment too, there are a number of ways to get practical experience while you're at school. Given that we're in the heart of Silicon Valley and right by San Francisco, there are so many people who are looking to tap into GSB talent, and there are tons of opportunity from alumni or people in the network to actually intern during the year or do part-time work. And that's a great way to learn from an investor and get practical experience while you're at school.
Awesome. Great. Now I'm going to turn it back to the panelists. And if you could give some advice to, you know, someone who's in the audience. What I say is, oftentimes people tell me as the dean that I won't get in. I don't know if I should apply. And I'm always like, just do it. You're never going to know unless you put yourself out there and do the application. So for someone who's thinking about applying, maybe even this fall, any tips you would give them in that process? And I'll start with Jessica.
Yeah, for sure. I think very much underscoring that you should just apply. You can always apply again if not, but I think a couple of things. One is like preparing for the GMAT obviously is important, but don't go crazy over it. I think that there's so much stress all the time over the standardized tests. And I really think the like getting to know Kirsten and getting to know sort of the GSB ethos, it's definitely a school that's focused a lot on like the holistic student. Obviously, like not in the admissions, but I definitely felt that when I was doing my interviews, and once I got my admissions letter, on the things that they were focusing on was not the GMAT score I got or my GPA. It was a lot around my experiences and how I thought about my vision for what I wanted to do. I think the thing that I would suggest for people to keep in mind is think about what the GSB motto is and what the GSB is trying to do in terms of the leaders that they want to nurture and how we want to really like change organizations, change lives, change the world, and think about like very seriously like how you intend to do that and how you're going to use your MBA to not just further your own career, but also how you really hope to make an impact in the world, and thinking around that. And I think that really helps you become a lot more inspired to apply and think about the impact you want to have if you're not just worried about, oh my God, I have to get like this GMAT score. And so trying to think a little more about the future and not just the short term, like how do I get through the application process, I think is important.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. How about you, Georgie? What would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely echo Jessica's comments. And I think what I would say is that the process can be incredibly daunting, but if you try to make the effort, it actually, at least for me, was a process of great self-discovery, especially the GSB application. One piece of advice I would give people is often people try to game the system or feel that there's a correct answer you have to give. And what I would say is definitely, especially for the GSB app, give the answer that is most authentic to you. I think that way you put out an application that you can feel good about regardless of the outcome. And frankly, Kirsten, I'm sure you can say it's probably more of what the GSB wants to see. It wants people to be really authentic and bring themselves. And so that's what I would say is sometimes you have to tune out the noise and put out an application that you feel is really true to yourself rather than what you think you should be or be saying.
Awesome. And I remember, Georgia, you were a classics major, is that right? And yeah, so
Good
many
memory.
times. Yeah, I remember your essays and everything. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it's not about presenting this finance person who's going to, it was presenting Georgie and who Georgie is and what she cares about. So it's great advice. How about you, Ishan? What would you say?
Yeah, I would echo everyone's points, but also add to take the writing portion seriously. Try different drafts. Don't try to write it in one day, but also don't try to create a shell of who you think you are. And I think that process of figuring out, hey, this reflects who I am, and come back to it and see it again will help you realize a lot more about yourself and give you clarity even before going to any MBA program. That's what happened to me. And so the exercise is valuable, but yeah, go ahead.
Ishan, I was going to say, is there anything you could speak to? Because I bet a bunch of folks are actually starting to write that essay. Anything that you concretely did to help you do some of that? You said you did multiple drafts.
I did multiple versions. So first I tried to answer the prompt directly and simply, I remember. And then I read it the next day and I said, hey, this sounds like what they want to hear, but doesn't sound like me. So I'm just gonna try to change it. And I started using more I statements and things we learn at GSB, but I didn't know yet.
That's great.
And that was valuable. And then, but I wasn't sure if that's how I should submit a quote unquote professional school essay, but I just went with it. And now I realize that's probably the best way to go with it because, I was admitted for who I am basically. And that's what makes leaders unique. And something I learned at GSB is those parts that make us who we are. So letting yourself show through I statements and giving personal anecdotes and small stories, I think is really important. Instead of just saying, hey, this is who I am and this is why I'm perfect, because nobody's perfect. So.
Well said. And we may be a little different than other schools, so I want you to be careful to do your homework as you're submitting other schools' essays. But at the GSB, I can promise you, we don't really care what you say is your aspiration in terms of whether you're admitted or not. So if you've never been in finance, like Jessica, and you say, I want to go into venture capital, we're not going to say, oh, she could never do it. We really believe that if you come to the GSB with the community and with all that you'll bring here, you will find a way to meet your aspiration, to fulfill your dreams as they were. It may not be immediately, it may be a pivot down the road, but we know you'll get there. So feel free to just speak to what you really think will be your true north. And we know that's going to evolve over time. But at this point in time, is there some problem you want to solve, something you care about, something you want to work on as an aspiration? That's really what we want to know. So Danielle, how about you?
Highlight everything that's being said. I think authenticity just is very important, and just think why are you unique? Like what makes you unique? And we're all unique. So really tell you what makes you unique versus anyone else that is applying. And normally like the professional side, like we all kind of, go to companies, work in companies, different roles, but normally the unique stuff are in the most on the personal side. And that's like where I think where the more emotions and a more powerful story comes when you kind of reflect on that why. More normally the things that has happened to you and that have impacted in your life mostly come on those personal or non-professional things that maybe some of them are also in the professional stuff that you can maybe complement, but just reflecting on really what drives you and what matters most, and how what you want to do in the future, or what are the things you want to work on or during this 2-year experience, and just trying to enjoy that process, not seeing it as this is an essay I have to write. This is a reflection process. I'm giving the opportunity to reflect about my life and why I want to go to this. This is not an MBA. This is a leadership and personal development program. It's an opportunity to be more self-aware, to be more introspective, to learn from diversity, from others, and be able to also support others in their journeys. So just understanding what the GSB's experience is about, which really that's what makes this school unique. This is not an MBA. It's a personal leadership. That's what I think is the most unique thing about this program. So once you talk with alumni, talk with students, read the articles that GSB put, read about the classes, and you understand those values, and you read about the values and the ethos of the school, and you understand that that's what makes this school unique. That's where maybe you start relaxing and say, wow, like let's connect on that, and let's see what are the things that connect me to those things that the GSB say they care about, because the values and the things Kirsten talks about in the article she writes and in the interviews that has been published about them, that's true. Like it's about that. It's not about the GMAT and GPA and all this stuff. Like there's many people with that, and a lot of those high grades and stuff don't get in. And people like me that got 60 points below the average or 80 points below the average in the GMAT got in maybe because there's a story around like that's, and just to highlight that the GMAT aspect. I almost didn't apply to the GSB. Almost didn't apply. A lot of my friends didn't apply because they got lower than average GMATs. And that's incredibly sad because this school looks for that thing that it makes you special. And your leadership potential. And that a GMAT normally, a GMAT is a score. It's an exam. It's not that doesn't define your leadership potential. So I will encourage everyone to please apply and please be authentic and just tell your unique story and just enjoy this reflection process of going through this essay.
Awesome. I'm looking, we have just 2 more minutes. That was great tips. And one thing I realized we haven't talked a lot about is the community. So anybody want to speak to what surprised them most? Because I always say we're like a family and people support you, but coming from me, I think it's a little hard to believe at times. So you guys have experienced it. But anyone want to put their hand up and talk about what surprised them most about becoming part of this GSB family? Don't all volunteer at once?
Yeah, I can take a quick go.
Ishan, there's your hand. Thanks.
Yeah. We have a special portal for alumni. And so I reached out during my first 6 months to, maybe 20 different alumni. And I think the average response was probably half a day, regardless of role, responsibility, function. So the network, the community is so tight-knit. It's pretty incredible. And, as alumni, I think we feel an obligation to support those that are coming after us. and support the community. And I saw that firsthand. I think I'm still about to see the benefits and the fruits of that, but it's really true. And I think you're right, Kirsten, to say that it has to come from the students saying that, because I didn't really believe it until I saw it fully. So.
Really awesome. Anybody else want to? Oh, Jessica.
Yeah, happy to jump in. Sort of two points that I think are interesting. One is to just double click on what Ishan said as a great example. I remember when I got into the GSB and I wanted to explore career and venture capital, I decided that I was going to go on LinkedIn and I searched general partner plus Stanford GSB on LinkedIn, and I reached out to approximately 45 people saying that I had just been admitted to the GSB. I was starting in the fall, gave them my background, would love to talk to them for like 20 minutes or get a coffee, whatever they wanted, just to learn a little more and get to understand VC. Imagining, of course, that maybe 5 people would reply to me, and so that would be fine. It turns out that every single one of the 45 people replied and were like, absolutely, I'll meet with you. Come for coffee. No, come to my office. It was really enthusiastic. So I actually ended up taking a week off from my job because so many people had replied and were excited to meet me that I did like a tour of Sand Hill Road and was going to all of these offices and to coffee at Coupa and coffee at whatever, because everyone was so excited to talk to me. And I think that that was already like a very clear, very, very clear example of how much the alums are there for you and how tight the GSB community is. And I think that's also true like at the GSB while you're a student. Just the level of support and love that exists between all the students. So many people that, you know, like, say like you had like a difficult family emergency, which happened to me during school, just everyone will rise up to the occasion and support you and find ways to help you and show up with bagels at your house. And it's just like, it's really like such an incredible community. And it's really like unparalleled to anything I've ever seen. My GSB classmates are my best friends, and I know they'll be my best friends for life. So I think both on like a personal level and also on the professional level, it's really a tight-knit community.
Awesome. Well, that's a great comment to wrap up on. I want to thank you so much, Jessica, Daniel, Ishan, Georgie. It's so fun to see you after reading all of your applications live on the screen. So I really appreciate your support. And for those of you in the audience, thank you for joining us, and good luck if you're putting in an application. We hope to get to know you better soon. Have a great day.